He didn't just create Microsoft. He created the digital world you live in. Every click, every line of code, every glowing screen bears the fingerprints of one man. Before the world called him a genius, they called him a dropout, a quiet, relentless mind who saw the future through lines of logic and refused to blink. From zero to over $100 billion, he turned curiosity into currency and built one of the richest empires in history. But his story isn't just about money. It's about obsession, failure, and the courage to think 20 years ahead of everyone else. He built the software that built the world and then gave his fortune away to fix it. This is not just the story of Microsoft. It's the untold story of the man who coded humanity's next chapter. The trillion-dollar mind, Bill Gates. Before he was the world's richest man, before the billion-dollar headlines, before the empire of Windows that powered billions of computers, there was just a boy named Bill Gates growing up in Seattle. Born on October 28, 1955, William Henry Gates III was the curious child who asked why about everything. While other kids played outside, Bill devoured encyclopedias. His parents, William and Mary Gates, quickly realized their son had an unusually sharp mind, a hunger for systems, for logic, for control. By age 13, at Lakeside School, Bill discovered a terminal, one of the first computer systems made available to students in the U.S. While others saw blinking lights, Bill saw the future. He learned basic programming obsessively, sometimes sneaking into the computer lab late at night. That passion became obsession, and that obsession became destiny. In 1973, Gates entered Harvard University, one of the brightest minds in a generation defined by digital curiosity. But Harvard couldn't contain him. The world was shifting, and Bill could sense it. In 1975, at just 19 years old, he dropped out, not because he failed, but because he refused to be limited by a system that couldn't move as fast as his imagination. That same year, he founded a company with his childhood friend, Paul Allen. They called it Microsoft, a blend of microcomputer and software. Their goal? To place a computer on every desk in every home. At the time, this sounded insane. In 1975, computers were bulky, expensive, and reserved for corporations and governments. But Bill had already seen a world no one else imagined, a digital future where software ruled everything. By the end of that first year, Microsoft had only made a few $1,000s. But by 1981, when they partnered with IBM to build an operating system for their personal computers, Gates negotiated the deal of a lifetime, retaining ownership of the software, MS-DOS. That one decision, simple yet revolutionary, became the seed of a trillion-dollar idea. By 1986, when Microsoft went public, its stock opened at $21 per share. Gates's 45% ownership instantly made him a paper billionaire, valued at over $350 million at age 31. Within a year, that valuation would triple, marking the dawn of a new age, the software age, and the rise of one of the world's first tech empires. While others saw code, Bill Gates saw civilization's next language, and he wrote the first sentence. The birth of Microsoft, from dorm room to global domination. It was the mid-1970s, a time when computers were the size of refrigerators, and the word software sounded like science fiction. But in a quiet corner of Harvard University, a young man named Bill Gates was seeing a future no one else could imagine. He spent long nights in the computer lab, surrounded by punch cards and the hum of machines. Most students came to Harvard to study the world, Gates came to rewrite it. One snowy evening, a magazine landed on his desk. Popular Electronics, January 1975 issue. On its cover, a new invention called the Altair 8800, the world's first personal computer kit. It had no screen, no keyboard, and no memory. But to Gates, it was the spark of a revolution. He saw not what it was, but what it could become. He picked up the phone and called his childhood friend, Paul Allen, a fellow computer prodigy. "Paul," he said, "someone's going to need software for this thing. Why not us?" That single question would ignite a partnership that changed human history. With nothing more than determination and borrowed lab time, the two friends began their mission. They didn't own an Altair 8800. They didn't have funding. All they had was vision and raw, untamed brilliance. For 8 sleepless weeks, they wrote the first version of BASIC for the Altair 8800, line by line, testing code on borrowed mainframes. When they finally got a chance to run it for real, it worked perfectly. The machine blinked to life, and history blinked with it. In that instant, Microsoft was born. The name, a fusion of microcomputer and software, carried the weight of destiny. Microsoft weren't just building programs. They were building the DNA of the digital future. They set up shop in a tiny office with second-hand furniture and barely enough money to pay rent. The walls were bare, the carpet thin, but the ambition was limitless. This wasn't a company, it was a calling. Gates would spend endless hours at his desk, coding, reading, calculating. He demanded perfection, not just from others, but from himself. His mind operated like a processor, fast, focused, unforgiving. And while others dreamed of weekends, he dreamed of changing the world. By the late 1980s, the world came knocking. IBM, the titan of computing, was entering the personal computer race. They needed an operating system. Gates saw the opportunity. He didn't have one yet, but he promised he did. It was a bold move, the kind that separates visionaries from mortals. In an act of quiet genius, Microsoft bought the rights to a system called QDOS, Quick and Dirty Operating System, for $50,000. They refined it, rebranded it, and delivered it to IBM under a new name, MS-DOS. What seemed like a simple contract became the foundation of a trillion-dollar empire. IBM PCs running Microsoft software flooded the market, and with every machine sold, Gates' dream expanded. Microsoft wasn't just a company, it was a revolution coded in binary. While others saw limits, Gates saw landscapes. While others chased success, he built systems that ensured it. He understood one timeless truth. Technology is not just about invention, it's about control. By the late 1980s, Microsoft had become the invisible hand behind the personal computing boom. Gates had done it. From a cramped dorm room, he had built the operating system of modern civilization. And this was only the beginning. The world was about to enter the age of Windows, and with it, Bill Gates would rise from a young dreamer to the architect of the digital age. The digital revolution, Windows, and the world at his fingertips. By the dawn of the 1980s, computers were no longer rare machines locked in laboratories. They were beginning to enter homes, schools, and offices. And at the center of this unfolding revolution was one man, Bill Gates. He was no longer the curious college dropout tinkering with BASIC in the dark. He was the commander of a new digital empire, Microsoft. But he wasn't satisfied. Gates didn't just want computers to exist. He wanted them to connect, to communicate, and to empower every human being on Earth. The world's first great digital migration was about to begin, and the map to that future was called Windows. The idea was simple but radical. Make computers accessible to everyone. At that time, using a computer meant memorizing lines of code and typing in commands. It was a tool for the few, not the many. Gates wanted to change that. He envisioned a system where people could see their computer's world, where icons replaced code and windows replaced walls. In 1985, after years of planning, the first version of Microsoft Windows was released. It was slow, clunky, and ahead of its time, but it carried within it the seed of something extraordinary. Critics dismissed it, rivals ignored it, but Gates didn't care. He understood that revolutions never start fully formed. They evolve, one line of code at a time. Over the next decade, Windows transformed from a curiosity into the heartbeat of modern computing. Windows 3.0 brought color and life to screens around the world. Then came Windows 95, the breakthrough that changed everything. Its launch was unlike anything the tech world had seen. A countdown streamed on global TV networks. The Rolling Stones to "Start Me Up" blasted across screens, and millions lined up to buy it. The world wasn't just installing an operating system, it was installing a new era of connectivity. For the first time, the average person could navigate digital space with ease. The Start button became a symbol of possibility, a gateway to the virtual frontier. Behind it all stood Gates, orchestrating a technological symphony that would define a generation. Then came the Internet, a vast, chaotic web of information that promised to connect humanity like never before. Gates recognized its power early. In a now famous memo titled "The Internet Tidal Wave," he warned that Microsoft's future depended on embracing it fully. He pivoted the company overnight. Engineers shifted focus. Teams rebuilt browsers. Microsoft launched Internet Explorer, integrating it into Windows itself, a move that would make it the world's default portal to the web. But with dominance came danger. The U.S. government accused Microsoft of monopolistic behavior. The empire Gates built was under attack from regulators and competitors alike. Through it all, Gates remained calm. His eyes were not on the courtroom, but on the horizon. He once said, "Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose." And Gates refused to be seduced. Instead, he adapted, evolved, and learned. By the end of the millennium, Windows ran on over 90% of the world's computers. Microsoft wasn't just a company anymore. It was infrastructure, the silent engine of civilization's new operating system. From banks to schools, governments to gamers, nearly every modern human interaction touched a Microsoft product. Gates had not only built a business, he had reshaped how the human mind interacts with the machine. And yet, behind the triumph, another transformation was stirring within him. The man who had conquered the digital world was beginning to think about something else entirely: the fate of the human one. That evolution, that awakening, would set the stage for the next act of his journey: the birth of the philanthropist. The power shift from CEO to philanthropist. By the dawn of the 21st century, the man who had conquered the digital world began to feel a different calling. Bill Gates had built an empire of circuits, screens, and software, a system that touched nearly every life on Earth. But power, he realized, was not just about wealth or innovation. It was about responsibility.
After 2 decades of relentless expansion, Gates stepped away from his CEO position at Microsoft in the year 2000. It was not a resignation, it was a redirection. He had achieved what few humans in history could, near absolute influence over the future of technology. But what good was power, he thought, if it didn't improve life itself? With his wife, Melinda, Gates co-founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, an institution that would soon become the world's largest private philanthropic organization. Its mission? To fight disease, reduce poverty, and expand access to education and technology across the globe. This was not charity for applause. It was strategy for humanity. Gates approached philanthropy with the same precision and data-driven mindset that had built Microsoft. Every dollar invested had to show measurable results. Every program had to prove impact. In a world filled with talkers, Gates remained a builder. Under his leadership, the foundation poured billions into eradicating malaria and polio. In sub-Saharan Africa and parts of South Asia, entire generations of children would live to see adulthood because of vaccines Gates helped fund. In schools across the United States, his initiatives brought computers and internet access to underserved communities, bridging the digital divide he himself once widened. And when questioned about why he devoted so much to global health rather than technology alone, Gates responded simply, "I measure success by the lives saved, not the lines of code written." Even as he moved away from day-to-day operations, Gates never abandoned innovation. His vision evolved from operating systems to sustainable systems. He began investing heavily in renewable energy, clean water technology, and agricultural innovation. He saw climate change not as a political issue, but as a mathematical one, a problem that could be solved with data, design, and human will. His belief was unwavering. If we apply the same intensity to the world's toughest problems as we did to building software, there's nothing we can't fix. But behind the billions and breakthroughs, there was a man in constant evolution. Gates' life was not without controversy. Critics accused him of monopolizing markets, of pushing aggressive tactics that stifled competition. But to Gates, the measure of one's legacy was not perfection, it was progress. He admitted his mistakes, redefined his image, and turned from a symbol of corporate dominance to one of human compassion. In 2006, he stepped away from full-time work at Microsoft to dedicate his time to the foundation. By 2008, Forbes listed him not only among the richest, but among the most generous humans alive. By the mid-2010s, Gates' influence stretched far beyond technology. He had become an architect of global health, education, and environmental change. His net worth, still towering above $100 billion, became less a trophy and more a tool, a weapon against suffering, ignorance, and time. The man who once sold software now invested in survival. And through it all, Gates's philosophy remained steady, that intelligence means nothing without empathy, and that true success is measured not by what you accumulate, but by what you contribute. As he once wrote, "We always overestimate the change that will occur in 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in 10. For Bill Gates, change was never a moment, it was a mission. The transformation of Bill Gates from ruthless innovator to visionary humanitarian. How his view of success evolved from market dominance to measurable global impact.
The legacy of innovation, the new frontiers, AI, health, and humanity. In the twilight of the digital revolution he helped ignite, Bill Gates found himself at a new crossroads, not of wealth, but of purpose. The empire he built had changed how the world communicates, works, and learns.
But in the quiet hours of reflection, Gates began to ask a bigger question. What comes after Microsoft? The answer wasn't in code or commerce. It was in the convergence of human intelligence and artificial intelligence, the next great frontier. In a world accelerating toward automation, Gates saw opportunity and danger. While most billionaires raced to build faster algorithms, he spoke of balance. Technology must serve humanity, not replace it. He often warned that AI could be as revolutionary as the Internet and as risky as nuclear energy if left unchecked. So he funded research into ethical AI, digital education, and data transparency, pushing for systems that amplified human potential instead of diminishing it. In his 2023 essay, The Age of AI Has Begun, Gates wrote that artificial intelligence would be as fundamental as the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone. To him, AI was not a threat, it was an evolution. And once again, he was at its edge. Through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he expanded his focus. AI-driven health diagnostics for remote regions, smart farming systems to fight hunger, and predictive models to combat climate change. He invested in companies like Breakthrough Energy Ventures, a coalition of global innovators tackling clean energy and carbon capture. From artificial intelligence to artificial photosynthesis, every move he made aimed at preserving the planet he once helped digitize. And yet, through all this evolution, one principle guided him. Innovation must serve the many, not the few. To the outside world, Bill Gates was still the Microsoft founder, the coder who became king. But to those who knew him, he was something rarer, a strategist who had learned to wield power without needing to possess it. His greatest legacy wasn't Windows or Word. It was wisdom, the ability to see the next storm before the first raindrop fell. He often said, the best investment any of us can make is in human potential. And for decades, he proved it, turning data into destiny and wealth into weapons against ignorance and disease. By 2025, Bill Gates stood among the most influential humans alive. His net worth, still hovering near $120 billion, seemed almost irrelevant. The true metric of his success could be found in lives improved, in ecosystems restored, in futures rewritten. He was no longer the boy who dreamed of a computer on every desk. He had become the man who dreamed of opportunity in every mind. And as the next wave of technology, AI, quantum computing, and sustainable biotech rose on the horizon, Gates' words echoed louder than ever. We're just at the beginning of what humanity can do when we combine innovation with empathy. The journey of Bill Gates is not just a chronicle of wealth. It's a reminder that vision, when paired with compassion, can rewrite the destiny of civilizations. From the cold glow of a 1970s computer lab to the warm light of a world made better by technology, his story remains one of transformation, of mind, mission, and mankind. Because in the end, Gates didn't just give the world Windows, he gave it a window into what humanity could become. Bill Gates' transformation from digital pioneer to global visionary, his focus on AI, sustainability, and humanity's survival beyond profit. The blueprint of a billionaire mind, Gates's hidden habits, routines, and decision patterns. Behind every fortune is a formula, but behind Bill Gates's fortune was a philosophy, quiet, methodical, and almost mathematical. He didn't chase luck, he calculated inevitability. Long before he became the richest man alive, Gates had already mastered a rare art, thinking in decades, not days. From his teenage years at Lakeside School, he trained his mind to absorb information like oxygen. He read every book he could find on science, economics, and technology, building a mental library that would later power Microsoft's rise. Even in his 60s, Gates still reads about 50 books a year, not to escape reality, but to predict it. He once said, "If you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough." So he rewrote complexity into clarity, turning ideas into blueprints, and blueprints into billion-dollar revolutions. Each morning begins in quiet, no distractions, no noise. Gates believes deep focus is the currency of innovation. He practices what he calls think weeks, 7 days of complete isolation in a lakeside cabin. No phone, no internet, just books, data, and a notebook labeled Gates Notes. Here, he dissects technology trends, reviews internal memos, and drafts predictions for the next decade. Many of Microsoft's greatest innovations, from Windows to the Internet Explorer era, began on those quiet pages. His thinking process blends logic and empathy. Before making any decision, Gates runs a mental simulation, asking, "If I were on the other side, what would I fear most?" That question turned him into a master strategist, anticipating competitors before they even acted. When IBM sought dominance, Gates sold them software. When Apple rose, he diversified. When Google appeared, he pivoted to cloud. His superpower wasn't coding, it was clarity. Bill Gates also lives by a principle few billionaires understand: deliberate slowness. In a world obsessed with speed, he invests in precision. He reviews data multiple times, asks for opposing views, and prefers to be late but right rather than first and forgotten. His patience is engineered, not accidental, because Gates knows that time, when used correctly, compounds like capital. But beyond all the intellect, Gates's discipline is built on humility, a reminder that no empire survives without evolution. He often tells young entrepreneurs, "Don't celebrate too soon. Success is a lousy teacher." He learned that the hard way, when Microsoft faced antitrust battles in the 1990s. Instead of retreating, he rebuilt himself as a philanthropist, proving that reinvention is the ultimate form of intelligence. To understand Bill Gates is to understand the architecture of a visionary mind, one built on data, driven by purpose, and guided by a single belief: that the future doesn't just happen, it's designed. And the blueprint is thought itself. A deep psychological and behavioral study of how Bill Gates structures his life, decisions, and mental routines to maintain dominance for over 4 decades. Power, criticism, and redemption: the trials of a global icon. When you become the richest man in the world, your shadow grows taller than your reflection. For Bill Gates, the world that once celebrated him as a visionary began to question his motives. The architect of a digital revolution became a symbol of global suspicion. It started quietly. Murmurs about monopolies and lawsuits in the late 1990s. The U.S. government accused Microsoft of crushing competition, of being too powerful, too dominant. In that courtroom, Gates faced not just judges, but the consequence of his own ambition. His empire was forced to divide, his image reshaped forever. But what most missed was the lesson he learned: power, no matter how vast, must be balanced with perception. In the aftermath, Gates retreated from corporate battlefields into something larger: humanity itself. He co-founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, redirecting his wealth into vaccines, global education, and poverty alleviation. To him, this was evolution, the logical next phase of problem solving. But the world, ever watching, began to question his motives once more. In the 2020s, amid pandemics and misinformation, his name became entangled in conspiracy theories. He was accused of plotting control rather than spreading aid. The man who once built operating systems now faced an operating system of fear, powered by algorithms, mistrust, and digital outrage. Through it all, Gates rarely retaliated. He simply worked. He doubled down on data, transparency, and results, trusting that truth would outlive noise. In those quiet corners of the world, where headlines rarely reach, his foundation changed millions of lives, reducing malaria, expanding digital literacy, and empowering health systems. While some saw control, others saw commitment. And perhaps that is the paradox of power. No matter your intent, the world will choose its own version of you. Bill Gates learned that redemption isn't about silence or speeches. It's about results that speak louder than opinion. His story is no longer just about innovation or money. It's about endurance, the ability to stand unshaken when the world misunderstands your purpose. In the grand equation of history, perception is temporary, legacy is permanent. For a man who built windows, he has spent a lifetime trying to look beyond them, searching not just for progress, but for meaning. And that, perhaps, is his greatest code yet. How Bill Gates' transition from business mogul to global humanitarian exposed him to the complexities of power, perception, and legacy, revealing the emotional cost of global influence. The legacy algorithm. How Gates's ideas still run the world. When history writes about the 21st century, Bill Gates's name will not only rest among innovators, it will be written into the DNA of civilization itself. For every click, every startup, every classroom where a child touches a screen for the first time, echoes the legacy of a man who saw possibility where others saw code. The operating systems he created are no longer just on computers, they are in our culture. The logic of software, precision, clarity, scalability became the logic of business, education, communication, and even charity. It was never just about programs, it was about patterns. Bill Gates understood that technology was not the end, it was the bridge. He once said, "The computer was born to solve problems that did not exist before." And yet his greatest problem to solve was never technical, it was human. How do you use immense power to make the world better, not just faster? Today, the empire he built no longer belongs to him. It belongs to the billions who use its language daily, the language of logic, empowerment, and access. Some call him a capitalist, others call him a savior. But perhaps he is neither. He is a teacher, a man who taught the world to think differently about what was possible. In his private reflections, Gates often speaks not of success, but of curiosity. The same curiosity that once drove him to take apart machines now drives him to decode poverty, disease, and education. For him, innovation was never about money, it was about motion, the forward momentum of ideas that never stop evolving. He no longer chases market share, he chases meaning. And in that pursuit, Gates embodies the paradox of genius. To build something so powerful that it outgrows even its creator. The legacy of Bill Gates is not stored in wealth or awards, but in impact. Invisible, vast, and enduring. It runs in the veins of modern civilization, in every bite of progress and every breath of innovation. For as long as humanity dreams in digital, his fingerprints will remain, embedded deep within the code of tomorrow. In the end, Bill Gates's greatest creation wasn't Microsoft. It was possibility itself. The story of Bill Gates began with a single vision: to place a computer on every desk, in every home. Decades later, that vision has become reality, shaping how billions live, work, and dream. But behind the empire, behind the billions, and behind the screens is a man who chose curiosity over comfort and purpose over profit. Today, his focus isn't on competition, it's on contribution. From eradicating diseases to transforming education, Bill Gates has redefined what it means to be successful. He no longer writes code, he writes a legacy of impact, one life at a time. Some say wealth is measured by what you have, but Gates proved that true wealth is measured by what you give. He turned technology into opportunity and power into progress, teaching a generation that the most revolutionary code isn't the one that changes machines, but the one that changes humanity. He didn't just build Microsoft, he built the future. And even as time rewrites history, the story of Bill Gates will echo as a testament that knowledge is power and compassion is purpose. This is Factsxup, where we uncover the minds that move the world.